Hello all, Jamie Rogers here from Craftmania, and today I thought we'd have a little look at a few of the techniques that you can do with one of our latest product releases. We're going to be looking at the wonderful world of clear texture paste, and of course, being Craftmania, we have an incredible bundle for you with a huge saving too. So if you don't already have some clear texture paste in your stash, this is the perfect time for you to top up or stock up or add to your collection. Clear texture paste to me is one of them products that really opens up a whole world of creativity. It's basically a medium in which we can add so much to. And in today's video, we're going to have a little look through just a few of my favorite techniques. But to be honest with you, it's kind of an endless video or endless opportunities, because there are so many bits that I'm not going to do today, but you can certainly think about doing once you've got hold of this product, such as adding in gilding flakes, glitters, different colors of texture paste, different mediums, different inks, different spritzers. Honestly, it's one of those products that once you've got a hold of it, the only limitation is your imagination, because there is so many ways you're going to be able to take this off and create with it. Now, before we even get started, let's talk about a couple of the little houseworky bits, homekeeping bits that we need to discuss. So, of course, if you would like to order any of the products that we discussed in today's video, you will, of course, find them on the Craftmania website, which is www.craftmaniacrafts.com. Once you've landed on there, usually we tell you to go to the YouTube tab, and you'll find all of the bits under the YouTube tab because it's a YouTube video. But today we're going to link you directly to the Jamie Rogers Crafts page on the website, because all of the goodies we're talking about today are my products that Craftmania happen to stock. So it's going to be an easy place for you to find every single item we talk about, and all of the different bits on the samples will all be on that page for you. So you don't have to go hunting, everything will be in one place. Now, of course, when we are shopping with Craftmania, we are going to get free UK P&P anytime we spend over £10. If you wish to upgrade your P&P to first class postage, then you can choose to do so if you wish to, at a flat rate of £3.95. If you wish to spend less than £10, then of course you can just come in and maybe just buy just the clear texture paste. Then of course you're welcome to do so, and your P&P will be capped at £2.95. We also ship to many locations around the world. You can find out more about our international shipping on the website, but that is capped at just £10. So wherever you are, it's capped at £10. If it costs more than £10, here at Craftmania, we will pay that difference for you. If it costs less than £10, we'll actually refund the difference to you. And it doesn't matter, of course, if you're shopping with us internationally or you're here in the UK where we are, it doesn't matter. You'll qualify to be part of our loyalty program, our Inner Circle Rewards program. And that means that you'll be able to collect points for every pound you spend. And then the more points you collect, the higher the tiers, the bigger the rewards you're going to receive as well. And it's a completely free system. Just a little way of saying thank you for you shopping with us here at Craftmania. So today's bundle, let's have a little look, shall we? So we are looking at our clear texture paste and elite mister bundle. Now in here we have got 6 misters and 1 pot of clear texture paste. I have all of these goodies with me to share with you too, but I thought it might be nice for you to see the bundle as you can here on the screen. Now your bundle, this is actually a great saving. This bundle should be £38.93. That is the recommended retail price for all 6 of the Elite Misters and for the 150ml jar of clear texture paste. But you can purchase the 6 misters and receive the clear texture paste completely free. The clear texture paste on its own has a recommended retail price of £8.99. So you will receive that completely free of charge if you choose to go for the bundle. That puts our bundle price at £29.94. So buy the misters, get the paste free. If you prefer, you can of course buy the misters on their own. You can buy them individually, or there is a bundle for those as well. And of course you can buy the clear texture paste on its own as well. After we've gone through a few of the techniques we're going to cover in today's video, you might even be having a little look at this and think, well, actually, I'm going to go for the bundle, but I'm going to get a couple of the clear texture paste because I can see I'm going to be using that time after time, which you will. So if you wish to, you can of course top up on your clear texture paste as well. The recommended retail price for that is £8.99, but we do have 10% off of that if you wish to buy it on its own, making that only £8.09. So a few options for you there already. But we've done enough waffling. Let's show you what you can actually create with these products, shall we? Because to be honest with you, That's of course what this is all about. So let's take you to the overhead so you can see what we're doing. So I'm going to bring in a piece of mirror card to begin with. Let's go for a little piece actually. We're going to put a piece of paper under that just to protect the desk so that I don't end up covering it everywhere in clear texture base. Now we don't have to do this with mirror card. This is just one of the items that I like to play around with, because of course you still get the lighting come through from the back of the mirror card. Now I'm going to go here into my pot here. Now I've already been using this. When you receive a new pot, you will find that you've got a clear lid and then you've got a sort of silver foil lid that goes over the top of it. I tend to keep this in place. I'm not overly too sure why. I tend to feel it's just a barrier that helps protect it and keeps out the air. But you don't have to, but it's just something I've kept in place. I'm then going to go in and get my texture paste out. Now, of course, your pot will come nice and full. It's 150 ml, so there's an awful lot in here. I'm going to dig out a small amount of it, and we're just going to go over the top of our mirror card. Now, I'm just kind of spreading this out as a thin layer. Now, you don't have to do all of this if you don't wish to, but I'm just going to cover it lightly, a bit like I'm adding butter to toast, something similar to that, but we're just trying to build up a bit of a clear base. Now you might already be able to see that we're creating a texture over our mirror card, and you could go for this kind of artistic swipe if you wish to, like I'm creating. You could add in a bit more texture and a bit more layer with it if you want to, and just leave it as you can see here. Now of course our texture base will dry completely clear. You might see it's kind of cloudy at this stage. That cloudiness will dry and you will end up with that texture that we have created on here already. Speaking of texture, what I like to do with this is bring in my palette knife and start patting across it. And this is what I class as our sort of frosty ice technique, or our cracked glass, depending on what you wish to refer to it as. And we're just using the base of the palette knife to just add in more texture. And you can really amplify this if you wish to. You can do a similar technique with a brayer if you prefer, by rolling the brayer over the top of it. But it's just a way of taking a piece of card or a piece of paper. Maybe this is one of your sort of fancy Casia craft papers or graphic 45 papers, and you just want to add a finish to that, add a bit of a medium to it, add a glossy finish, a texture, then of course you can do that. Now this is how, or what we have created so far, and we can choose to leave that as it is and it will dry brilliantly. And I'm going to show you, I will leave that off to one side for a second. I'll show you a couple that I've already done that have dried. Now that will take a while to dry because we're working on top of mirror card, which is a non-absorbent surface, so do estimate that to be maybe 2 hours-ish to dry perfectly, depending on the room temperature and the amount of texture paste you've applied, and once again the medium or the base card that you're working over. If you was working over a plain colour cardstock or a graphic 45 paper, for instance, they're going to be more absorbent than our mirror card is, and it's going to absorb in quicker. Now once this is dry, this is the texture that we have created. Now you can see and you can hear that we have made this really cool sort of cracked ice or frosty glass style effect to it, which works really nicely. Now there's no reason why once we've created this we can't do more to it. So I wanted to show you a couple of techniques that we can level this up. So straight away, one of the options we have is to die cut. So I've brought in our Cosmos flower and I have chose to die cut this. Now I've gone for a relatively plain die cut. I have a feeling if we went for something really lacy, like the corners that are on this card for instance, it might struggle a little bit more depending on the machine you're working with. But because we've gone for a simple outside shape, it's cut it no problem. And it's also, because our die does this, it's debossed in the details on the petals to give us a bit of detailing as well, which is really lovely. And so once I could see that we could die cut this, that got me thinking of what else could we do with it. So how about embossing it? So I've brought in an embossing folder and I have embossed this using the 3D Rose folder. Oh, excuse me, sorry, I tried to fight that for as long as I could. So I've brought in our embossing folder and I've embossed this with our 3D Rose embossing folder. And then over the top, because of course, again, we can add more to this, I've brought in just a couple of alcohol markers. And I've done a little bit already just so you can see what I mean, but we can very quickly and easily go in and highlight over the top of this with our alcohol markers to add in more colour, more pattern, more definition. So I'm going to do the sort of bold bit or the top of these with the chunky end of the pen, and then I'm going to go back in with the thin end of the pen and just go into all of the nooks and crannies, all of them indents that we've created. Now, of course, even once we've done this, there's no reason we can't add more. And it's all about layering up, isn't it? It's all about bringing in more. Now, just before Christmas, we did an amazing video with Wax Lyrical, the pink ink Wax Lyrical. Now, that's a really cool like gilding wax that we can go in and add over texture and add over items. And it works really nicely to bring in a sort of vintage feel. Now, there is nothing stopping us at all from bringing in some of that and adding a nice golden halo over the top of this. Now, of course, we're going to pick up on the texture that we've created with that clear texture paste and the debossing and end up with some really lovely finishes. So even once you've started colouring this, think about adding more to it if you wish to. Now, another thing that we can do, another way in which we can take this is by adding more into the original concoction. So if I bring back in our panel that we've just been working on, and I'm going to find myself a little tray. Please excuse me banging about. I'm going to bring in a baking tray. I love working on baking trays whenever I'm going to get messy because it gives me the perfect way to take that out of the way without creating too much mess. So we're going to bring that back in the panel. This is our wet panel we just created, and I'm going to show you a different way that we can add more to this. So of course, in your bundle, you're not only getting your clear texture paste, you're also getting your Elite Misters. And we're going to bring these in so we can have a little look at them. So our Elite Misters, these are the perfect misting background mister, basically, and they come in 6 colours. And these misters coordinate perfectly with our Elite cardstock. So we've got Sunbeam Yellow, Night Sky Navy, Gladiator Red. We've also got for you Rose Petal Pink, which I think is probably my favourite. I love the pinks. They're just so subtle, so elegant. We've then got Seashell Blue, and to top this off, we've got Heritage Green. Now these match in perfectly with our cardstock. So you can see here, I've layered them onto our Elite cardstock, hence why they're called Elite Misters. So of course we can mist over stencils. We can do loads with these. We can mix them into different items like we're going to be doing throughout this video. We can also stamp with them. So if you take your mister, you mist it out onto an applicator tool, and then you apply that over your stamp, you can then stamp all of these colours to create some really cool stamped effects with them as well. So not only are they a mister, they're also a stamp pad or an ink pad as such. They're also an additive that we can mix into different concoctions to make different recipes. And that's kind of what we're going to do here. So on this panel, what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our Elite Misters, and we're actually going to take off the applicator because we don't want too much of this, and we're going to tap this over the top. And we're going to go back in and we're going to pick up a little bit more, and we're going to tap that over the top. And we're just bringing out the smallest amount that we can in little drips and drabs to colour over the top here. Now you can of course make this into its very own background, and you can leave it as it is, and you'll find that that mister will travel out slightly into its concoction as it is. But what we can also do is bring back in our palette knife and start working that colour in, because it's there to play with. So if you want to add that in slightly to add like a pink hue, you absolutely can do. So I'm going to show you one here that I've done a little bit more of, and I've allowed it to dry already. So here is that pink put through, being picked up in the texture. How cool is that? How nicely does that work? Now, of course, you can mix your colours. So here's one I've done with a few different shades. So you can see the yellows, the blues, the pinks, the reds, all coming through in that one to make up that really cool background. And these are just different ideas for you. Another idea that we can do, hence the tray, hence why I knew I was going to get a bit more messy, is bring in our misters and actually spray onto the top of this. So that one was the Rose Petal Pink. This one is the Sunbeam Yellow that I'm going in with now. And then we'll top it off with a slightly darker shade. Let's go for this Night Sky. I love the Night Sky Navy. So we'll do a small amount of the Night Sky Navy around the edges. Now again, you can do that as much as you want. You can do that as intently or as lightly as you wish to. You can bring back in your palette knife if you wish and start mixing these together, blending these colours in, picking those up. Can you see that green coming through from where the yellow and the blue are mixing? There's no reason you can't carry on playing, carry on adding, sprinkle in some glitters, different mediums if you wish to. Here's a couple of panels I've done with this in mind. Here is one that's dry. Now I love this because it looks a bit like candy wrappers, doesn't it, that we get on sort of the sweets at Christmas. And that's a really lovely background that you can create. And again, up to you what colours you mix in or which ones you leave out, but a really lovely way that you can play around with that. You can of course be more subtle if you wish to. So this one's a bit more subtle. We've got the yellows, the blues, the pinks and the reds coming through on this one, but it gives you an idea of how you can play around with those to create background panels. And of course, just like we did with the first set, we could die cut those, we could colour over those, we could play with those if we wish to. So let's bring in something slightly different. Let's go for another piece of our mirror card, and we're going to bring in one of our circular stencils. Now again, these are on the same page when you go onto the website as all of the other bits that we've linked to, but these come with a set of 4, if I remember rightly, all different size circles, all nested together. I love playing with these and working with them because there is just so much we can do with these. So we're going to bring in another palette knife. We're going to go back into our clear texture base, and we are going to go just through the middle here of the circle. Now, not only do these come in circles, they also come in squares as well. So if you're looking at these and thinking, well, I can mask off every stencil I own to create circular stencils, I can just ink through that to make really cool shaped backgrounds. Absolutely, you can do. You can also send them through your machine to emboss with them as well. So you could make little circular frames or square frames on your card or your paper, and then create within that circle or that square, or stamp onto it, build up with it. You can also letterpress with these as well. So if you think about inking or stamping over the circle, then sending that through your machine, that works really nicely too. So once we've created this base, we're going to do very similar to what we was doing last time. We're going to bring in our Elite Misters, and we're just going to tap these over the top here to make up what I think looks a little bit like a party popper background, but could also be confetti for a wedding. It could just be a really fun modern card. You could go for some darker shades or mix some darker shades and go for more of the aspect of doing a man's card or a vintage card with it if you prefer. So we're just going to add in, and I'm getting a bit messy now. Forgot to put something underneath this, but never mind. We'll clean up in a second. So again, in with our Elite Misters, this time the Night Sky Navy. And then we haven't yet used that lovely green, have we? This is our heritage green, so we're going to bring in some of this as well. I'm going to add in a few taps of this over the top. Now, can you see why we've done a bundle together of the Elite Misters and the clear texture base? The reason is together, there is just so many ways in which you're going to be able to take these and work with them to create so many fun and unique ideas. So if we take this stencil and we remove that, what we've then created is this like petri dish style panel that we've inked and worked within. Now, of course, you could choose to cut that out if you wanted to. You could layer up on top of that. You can work with this in so many ways. I'm going to show you just a couple of ones I've already done. So this one to me is giving me sort of Christmassy vibes, which I thought was kind of cool. Of course, we've got the texture. We've got that clear sort of gloss coming through, and then you've got the dots of ink on the top there. Another one here, slightly less ink, more party popper, more Christmas, birthday-y, I feel. So Christmas with this one, more birthday-y with this one. And then of course we don't have to do this on mirror card, and it certainly doesn't have to be silver mirror card. Even if it is mirror card, how about bringing in your acetates to work on acetate as well and create your really cool sort of wraparounds or frames or shaker card elements with that on top and then working within it. So loads and loads of ways you're going to be able to play around with those to get creative. So let's just clear this desk up just slightly, and then we'll move on to our next technique. So again, just clearing down with water. This is a water-based medium that we've got here when we're talking about our Elite Misters. So very, very easy clear up. Now, another thing I would tell you about the bottles, I usually have one of these here actually. I don't know where my one's gone, but once we have used all of our mister, because we do, you know, you can see I've really gone to town with the pink. I love the pink one. There's not too much left in that one. Once you've used them all, peel the label off, turn them into mister bottles. You never have to buy a mister bottle again, whether you choose to fill them full of water, or maybe you want to start bringing in and making your own colorways. Mix and match to make brand new colours, store them in the empty bottles, works a treat. Of course, before you've emptied them, you can always mix them up in other bottles. You can dilute them down with water. So loads and loads of ways you're going to be able to play with those to create different styles as well if you want to. Now then, let's go on to another little technique for you, another one of my faves here. We're going to bring in just a piece of card, and we're going to work on some white card here. if I can find a piece. Oh, let's go for this. Here we are, there's some white card. And we're gonna bring in, let's start off with, let's see if I can find a stencil. Let's go for this stencil. This is one of my favourite stencils. I love this stencil. This one is a floral spray, if I remember rightly. But again, it's on the same page, so you don't have to go searching for it. They're all in one place, all on one dedicated Jamie Rogers Crafts page on the Craftmania website. So it's all easy for you to find. So we're going to bring in our clear texture paste and we're going to work all the way across the top here of our stencil. Just making sure that we've got a nice amount going through each of those elements. Now you might already know this, but our Jamie Rogers Craft stencils are cut from a slightly thicker mylar to the average stencil, what most brands use. Ours is a little bit thicker. Now we do this intentionally because it means that we can emboss the stencils and you end up with a kind of like a traditional embossing folder level of embossing. They really are quite impressive when we emboss them. It also means that when we apply texture paste through them, we've got more depth. So straight away when we remove that stencil, there's more at play there. There's more depth to what we've created, giving us a more intense finish, which to me is really important because it just means that we're going to end up with a nicer finish and more impressive depth to what we've created. So we're going to bring in just a couple of pieces of card just so you don't have to keep watching me mask and clean off my desk. And we're going to try and stay within the area when we get misty. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring back our Elite Misters and we're going to start misting over the top here. Because this is another thing that we can do. We can literally work over the top of that clear texture paste. We've masked off the rest of the stencil and we can just start adding in our colours where we want to create a really cool finish. Now, I've of course got some of these finished so I can show you how this is going to work. Now we're adding some of the red as well. This is the Gladiator red. I love this red. Such a fresh colour. And we might, let's go for a little bit of night sky navy. We'll do a little bit just to darken it down slightly because I really like these when they go dark. I feel it looks a bit tortoise shelly. Now, if I was sitting at home doing this and I weren't trying to do this for a video, I would leave that a minute. I would let that settle. And I say this because any time we've got a pool of mister, if we lift the stencil off, we might find that the ink will go through underneath and it will colour the card where we don't want it to. So if you can just give it a couple of minutes to let any pools sort of disperse and sort of start to settle, brilliant. But of course we don't want to leave it too long because we don't want to glue our stencil down to our piece of card. So it is a bit of a time thing here. But we're going to remove the stencil now so you can see what I mean. But if we get any floods go through, it's not the end of the world. So we're going to take that away. And what we have created is this really cool effect. So I'm going to try and lift this up for you so you can see it. Now again, if I was sort of doing this for my own work, I wouldn't be moving this around too much too soon because I would want that to stay in place and dry as you see it. But the ink will sit on top of that texture base, it will start to absorb in. And what we'll end up with is like an encapsulated finish that I feel looks a little bit like tortoise shell. So if I bring this one up, this is one that's already dry. You can see that you end up with a glossy finish from the texture paste, but you also see all of those colours sit within that design and create that really cool finish. Now, how beautiful does that look? How cool is that as a finish that you could be doing with every single stencil you own? Now again, and we mentioned this a lot through this video, but there's nothing stopping you sprinkling in glitter, adding in gilding flakes, doing more to that concoction while we're working with it. So you don't ever have to stop where I'm stopping. I'm just showing you where I'm sort of going to and what my ideas are, but there's so much more you can do with these. Now the print that we just took, or the bit that we just created, we can take a print from this. So we're going to bring back in this stencil and we're going to lay this down on top of a piece of white card. So again, back onto our white card, face down, just so we can see that. Now normally I would go over this with a brayer or I would send it through my machine with the stack that I would use to emboss it. But I forgot to bring my brayer with me. So we're going to give it a bit of a push. It doesn't matter if it doesn't come out perfect, but we're going to just apply a bit of pressure to the back of this. And what we're doing is we're taking a print off of the top of that stencil. Now don't forget with this stencil, because of the design of the stencil, we pretty much only concentrated on that area. If you want to take a proper print and you want to use the whole thing, make sure when you're misting, you mist over these edges as well, so that you then can take a print from that area too. But with my one, I know there's not too much in them areas. But we'll take this part away. Now the piece of card that we put over the top here, or paper, you can use paper, is great because what this is going to do is anything that sneaks out, underneath that stencil will go onto the card. Instead of where I'm rubbing, I would normally, if I hadn't have put that in place, I would take that and I'd be rubbing that colour for every single flower. And we would end up with some really messy looking flowers. Now this part, you might choose to use this. This is kind of nice. It could look really cool in a journal. It could be its own little background. You could bring in some misters. You could paint in these flowers. You could do loads with that if you want to. Or of course, you can just treat it as copy paper and dispose of it. Now, when we take away the stencil, what we'll find, and see like even here, the areas, like I said, oh, I haven't done too much in them areas. If we look at this, how vintage and cool does that look? Where we've got this sort of dispersed imagery going off over the edges. I really like that actually. But of course you could add more in there if you want to. Now you're going to find that you've got some texture coming in, like here where we've got big bits of texture paste. We've got sort of like an encaustic art style look to them, which is really lovely. In other areas where there's less texture paste and there's just more of the mister, we've just got the print coming off of it. But that will dry and we'll end up with like a glossy finish to it. Now, of course, I went with quite dark colours. You could do that with lighter colours if you want to. You could add more into them areas. You could even clean off your stencil and then bring back in the stencil, match it up to the design. It'll take me a second to do this, but you're going to get the idea. Match it up and then add another layer over the top, whether that be with inks or texture pastes, and go in and colour those white flowers with something different. That could look really nice as well. Or you could emboss it. There's loads you could do with that if you want to. So we've got 2 for 1 out of that stencil. Let's just show you a couple of these because I have another one here I've done as well. This is our, I can never remember, Floral Delight, I believe, is this stencil. But again, it's going to be on the same page for you on the website, which will be linked in the description if you'd like to go and have a little look at it. But there, of course, is our positive. Then we have our negative print from that same stencil, that same time. And then here we've got the negative print from when I did the positive of this one. So again, loads of different ways you're going to be able to use those and play with them and build up with them. I just love them style of techniques that we can be creating so effortlessly with having our clear texture paste in the game, and especially with our misters as well. It just really makes a great combo that we can get creative with. Then moving on, what else can we do with this here clear texture paste? Well, this is probably my favourite technique that I have found I can do with clear texture paste, and not one I knew of or had found from anywhere else. It was one that I was just playing with, fell in love with it and thought, do you know what, that's a game changer. That's one that we've got to play and we've got to show. So we're going to bring in our floral, I can never remember the names, I'm so bad at this, I need to write them down. I think this is our Floral Burst, Floral Delight stencil, Floral Delight stencil. And we are going to anchor this one down with a bit of tape. I don't normally anchor them down, but I know what I'm going to do is going to take me a minute, so I'm going to anchor this one down. We're then going to bring in our oxide inks. Now, I love colouring, but I'm terrible at it. And it doesn't matter whether it's blending, whether it's colouring, whether it's distressing, I'm pretty terrible. So what I like to do is try and find hacks or shortcuts for me to look more talented than I actually am. You know, we all want to do that, don't we? We all want to look like we're more intelligent or more capable than we potentially are, and I'm no different. So if I can find a way to make something look better without having to really master that art, I'm going to try and do that. And this to me is one of those techniques because I'm not great at blending, I'm not great at colouring. So what can I do that's going to make me look more talented than I potentially am? Well, I can bring in my clear texture paste and I can create a really cool effect using a stencil and some oxide inks. So we're going to start off with our scattered straw. We're then going to go for shaded lilac. Now, of course, if I wasn't doing this on a video, I would be cleaning my stipple brush in between colours so I don't contaminate my inks, but I'm not worried. It's not the end of the world. But if you're worried at home, then please make sure you do colour your, or clean your brushes in between, dipping into different colours. So we're not going to do all of this because that's going to get a bit boring for you to watch, but we do need to build up a few colours. We do need a few areas to make this work because we need that base down for us to start playing around with. And if there isn't some ink in play, we're not going to get a great effect. So we're going to add in just a bit more shading to those. And we'll concentrate mostly on this area here. We're then going to go into the dried marigold. And we're going to pick up some of this. And I'm going to intensify the middles to those yellow flowers so that we've got yellow around the edge and the marigold in the middle, just to bring in a bit of shading even with our colouring. And then we're going to, we'll pick this up and we'll do these smaller flowers as well, just for speed. You could certainly add in other colours, but I'm trying to be conscious that you're going to get bored of watching me stipple. So we'll add in a bit more colour to those. Then we're going to go for, let's do the green. We'll bring in the green next. So this is the evergreen bough, and we're going to add in the green for the leaves. Now, I'm not worried, as you can probably tell, about if I go over the edges into the flowers. This really doesn't make too much difference. Depends on what stencil you're working with. You might want to use a smaller stencil brush so you can get down into the more nitty-gritty areas. But this is just a quick example for you, so it doesn't matter too much if it's not perfect, but I think you'll like it. So I'll add in a bit more green. My poor brush is falling apart today. I don't know what's going on. This is normally fine for this. I'm only stippling, what they're there for. So then we're going to bring in some of the seedless preserves, just because we want a slightly brighter colour to work with as well. And we're going to, let's go in and add in a couple of those. I'm going to add that one there. I'm getting carried away now, aren't I? We didn't do any colour on that one or that one. And then maybe a little bit of that in the middles. Just add in a third shade to our flowers. We'll do a bit more on that one. I'm getting carried away now. I like this because it's a bit brighter. So, okay, I think I'm going to leave it there, but you don't have to. Play, add, create to your heart's content. We'll tap off any of them bristles that have come away, and we're now back to where we were with our stipple background. Now, I'm going to show you this because I think it's nice. Again, if I was doing this just for me, I wouldn't release that yet because I don't want to run the risk that I'm going to move it when I put it back. But if we have a look at that, we've got a lovely stippled effect, but it's very stipply, it's a bit messy. And this is what I mean about finding hacks to make my creations look better. So we're going to go in and we're going to bring in our clear texture paste. Now this to me was magic. When I did this the first time, I didn't know this was going to happen. I really didn't. What I thought was, well, my colouring doesn't look great, so I'm going to add some clear texture paste over the top of it, and maybe that'll disguise it. When I started playing with this, what I found was that because of the oxide inks are quite juicy and stay wet for quite a while, and of course we've got colour around the stencil that we've added in through our colouring, is actually when we work the clear texture paste over the top, it activates the oxides and it starts moving them around. And we end up with this really beautiful, soft blend that works perfectly to create these sort of ombre effects running through our colouring. So we're just going to keep working this. And I kind of like working it in lots of different directions, because then you don't just get one drag in one direction. You don't just get the dark purple going down over the tops of the flowers in one way. We're going to create a multi-effect. So we're going to bring it round and we're going to keep working it. Now, of course, the texture base is becoming coloured, and that's a really good thing as well. And I'm going to show you that on a bit of scrap so you can see what I mean. We do it on this edge here. We bring that in. Can you see that colour we've picked up? That colour is there. We've coloured our texture paste. It's got its own shade to it. We could use that on its own if we want to. We could even bring that into an area that we haven't added any of the stippling through and create a very light kind of backgrounded colour. Oh, excuse me. If you wish to. Now we'll take away the stencil so you can see what we created. Now this reminds me of like really beautiful jelly sweets. And of course, I don't say that in any sense for you to eat what we've created, because that would not be a good idea, not an edible product. But what we've created is these really cool blends. How beautiful is that? Even like that flower there, I can't point to it, where we've got that little bit of purple going over the edge. Isn't that beautiful? You can see how well they connect together. We can see those three colours coming through on the big flowers. You can really play with this and work this as you want to create some really cool effects. Now, of course, the stencil, just like we did with the last stencil, we could take a print off the top of that. So you've got more value for money again, because you can print what you created. But I'm going to show you a couple of cards that I've created with this technique. I'm going to keep that one safe because I'm going to have to make a card out of that panel at a later date, but I'm going to share these ones with you as well. So this one here, I've got a couple of smudges here. Ignore the smudges, but this again is done with that floral spray stencil with our oxide inks, just slightly brighter shades used on this one, and then the texture paste put over the top to create that really cool blend. You've possibly seen this one on the Jamie Rogers Crafts Facebook page, because I love this. I've been sharing this a couple of times. And then we've got a butterfly one here done with a formation stencil, which again was just stippled through just like you see, and you can see those colour mixes coming through in the butterflies to create these really cool backgrounds. underneath each of those. That's the formation stencil. So formation stencil, floral spray stencil. So that's a couple of different ideas for you using that blend. Now there are even more ideas I've got to share with you. So let's bring in another piece of card. And we're going to bring in another stencil because I want to try and fit in as many ideas as we can possibly fit into this video for you, just to give you some different ways in which we can use this. And we are going to bring in a blending mat. Now, if you haven't seen our blending mats already, we of course have these on the website for you. They come in large and small, and there are 2 in the large ones and 6 in the small ones. And these should be, I'm trying to remember now, they should be $5.99 per pack. Or you can buy them for $5.39 because they've currently got 10% off per pack. But these I love because I use these as little mixing plates and little mixing palettes all the time to create different bits with. So we're going to bring in, oh, wrong one, sorry, pick the right camera. Oh, wrong camera again. Honestly, I'm terrible. I should never be left to do things like this on my own. So back to our blending mat. We're going to bring in some of our texture paste and we're going to put out a fair bit of this, because we want to do a little bit of this stencil. We don't want to do loads of it, but we want to make sure we've got enough to go around so you can see the idea. We're then going to bring in our Sunbeam Yellow from our Elite Mister. And what we're going to do is we're going to mist onto the actual texture paste. So 2 pumps, and then we're going to mix this together. Now what I've basically done here is created my very own glossy glaze colour. And that is a great use for your clear texture paste and your Elite Misters, because it means that we can make our very own mediums. And I love that ability. Now, if you make too much, you can put this into an airtight container, or even if you have to, a grip seal bag. As long as it's airtight, you'll be able to come back to it at a later date. So if you make too much, you can do that. If you're making loads of a project and you want to make sure that you've made enough colours to come back to at a later date, then you could do that as well if you wish to. It's just knowing that you can create enough to go around, or if you make too much, you've got that ability to come back to it at a later date. So we're going to go for these first 2 or 3 lines with this colour. Then we're going to skip, let's go for skipping 3, and we're going to do another 3 here. This is something I've never done before, actually. So we're playing, really. I love doing these kind of videos because it's just about playing. It's just about being creative and seeing what ideas I can share with you to hopefully inspire you to get creative. And I often say this, and you've probably heard me say this many times before, but the worst that's going to happen is that you're going to make a mix or you're going to make a background and we don't like it. What have we really lost? We've lost just a small amount of texture paste, which I'll show you in a minute. Let's show you that now, actually. If you put down your texture paste and you don't like it, you know, you've really not liked what you've created, take it away again. Pick it up, take it away. Put it back on your mat, do something different with it. You know, if it's gone through this stencil and you're not happy with it, what have we lost then? All we've then lost is the piece of card. And the piece of card, slightly discoloured, so flip it over and use the reverse of it. You've, in theory, lost nothing because that's reusable on the other side. And the texture paste has gone back onto the mat to be used for the next sample, next project, next whatever you're going to do with it, next experiment you want to play. So you lost absolutely nothing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in 2 pumps of Gladiator Red. I should have used the bigger blending mat, shouldn't I? I can see that now. I can see my mistake happening right in front of my eyes. Should have gone for the bigger mat. And then that way I wouldn't have gone over the table. Not the end of the world. Now I can see there's not going to be enough here already, so I'm going to go in and we're going to pick up a bit more of our texture paste and we're going to hook this out. This poor jar has been well and truly used. I need to get my next jar. I've got 3 jars here and yet I'm still sort of working on the first jar. You get 150 ml in a jar. And I genuinely mean this, it goes a very long way. I've done all of my samples for this release with those jars and still just sort of getting to the point that I need to start thinking about more. We're going to add this over the 3 in the middle. And then what we're going to do is we're going to possibly create a bit of a blend with it as well. Let's see how that works. So we're going to go for those 3. We're then going to pick up and we're going to go down these 3. But I'm not being overly protective because it's really not the end of the world if we get a bit of contamination going in any direction. So again, down into these ones. And then I might bring in a clear palette knife if I've got one, which I haven't. I think I've used them all. So we'll clear this one off. And then what we'll do is, let's go that way. we're just going to try and bring that red slightly over into some of the yellow so that we've got a bit of a mix going on, because I think that will look quite nice. And it'll give us a bit more of a joined together feel, you know, a bit more of a cohesive feel to what we're doing. And it also means that the excess that we take away, we can put back onto that tile, we can make another mix, and we could use that over another stencil. So all of that can go back onto there, so even more pennies saved, which is good. We like that. We'll then take away the stencil. Oh, look at that. Isn't that lovely? How cool is that? So I really love the way that we've got that colour blend coming through on the first row of stars on both sides. It's subtle, but it's there, and I really like that. Of course, we could do more over the top of this if we want to, but actually how fun and fresh is that? Again, I'm thinking birthday cards, Christmas cards, New Year cards. There's so much you can do with a star. Now, you might not know this actually. Our star stencil and I can never remember the names. I think this one's Christmas Icons. They both match up with one of our stamps. I don't think I've got the stamp here actually. Have I? Oh, I have got one here. These match up with our pinstripe stamp, and you can layer the stamp over the top and stamp it down, and you then end up with the stamped lines in between the lines on your pattern. And that's a really cool way to make like multi-tonal backgrounds. So maybe we want to come in and add some black lines or blue lines or something, go in between the stars. Really great way to do that if that's something you would like to do. So that, of course, was using our Gladiator Red and our Sunbeam Yellow to create that mix. And we'll come back to that shortly for something else, actually. But that shows you how you can mix those. Here is a card that I've already done where I used the Night Sky Navy. So Night Sky Navy cardstock with the Night Sky Navy Elite Mister being mixed into the clear texture base to make up our really cool glossy background. So loads we're going to be able to do with that background as well. Another card I'm going to have to make because I really like that and I don't want to let that one go to waste. So we'll leave that one. We'll come back to that shortly. Then we're going to go on to another technique. Now this kind of combines a couple of bits actually that we've been looking at. Oh, and another mention, I'm going off now on tangents, aren't I? Another thing I wanted to mention, we did this on a Facebook Live on the Jamie Rogers Crafts page the other night, so it's nice to remind you that you can do it. Of course, today we are talking about mixing in our Elite Misters to our clear texture base. But there's no limit. There's no reason why you can't mix in other items. And a bit like I said earlier, experiment, try. The worst you're going to lose is just a little bit of medium. So play and see. But our metallic inks are great for, again, bringing out onto a blending mat, mixing in with the clear texture base and making a really cool colour. So play around with those as well. It's just a different medium to give you a little nod to that you can work with. Now then, our next technique, this is something that was completely new to me. I got inspiration off of a lovely lady on YouTube. Again, I've done it again. I keep saying I'm going to look up her name and I forgot to do it again for this video. Honestly, what am I like? But there is a lovely video on YouTube from this lovely German lady. And this was an idea and a technique I had never seen before in my life. And I wanted to share it with you. I'm going to have to find her name and credit her in the description because I just cannot forget to credit her again. It's just ridiculous. It's just me being forgetful. So we're going to go in and we're going to use our clear texture paste again. Now for speed, I'm going to dig into another pot just because I've got a little bit more in this one. I can get it out a little bit quicker. Save scraping the barrel. And we're working this time. The lovely lady, I'm just going to have to call her the lovely lady. I'm so terribly sorry. I'm so forgetful. But the lovely lady did this over glossy card. Now, I didn't have any glossy card to hand, so I've gone for using some of our pearl card. Now, the reason the lady used glossy card was because we need to be working on something that's non-absorbent. We don't want the colour to go down too quickly and stay in place. So we want to be able to build up on top of it and let the inks stay wet for a while. So I'm working with pearl card, but experiment with glossy card, play with different styles of card, see how you get on. But pearl card to me worked really nicely. So we're going to go all over the stencil. Now this one is our lovely diamonds stencil. This actually came out with a Christmas release last year. I really like this stencil. It's one I keep going back to time after time, but it's really lovely for this technique because it's not too full on. It's not, you want to basically have two different stencils and you don't want two sets of flowers because you're just going to get lost in the flowers. So something generalized like this works really nicely for your first layer. We're going to take away the stencil. And actually, when you look at this, doesn't that look lovely just to clear on its own over the top of the pearl? It's really fresh and nice. But actually, we want to add more to this. So we're going to bring back in our Elite Misters. Now, for this technique, what you want to do is you want to start with your lighter shades, because we're going to build up with the darker shades slightly later on. So we're going to start with the three lightest, which is Rose Petal Pink, Seashell Blue, and Sunbeam Yellow. And we're going to go more for the light shades than the dark ones. Even that lovely yellow is a bit dark, so we'll add in just a small amount. So over the top, first of all, with the Rose Petal Pink, then we're going to add in some Seashell Blue. I love these two colours together. This is giving me gender reveal card or baby card or something along them lines. I think it's a really lovely colour scheme to work with, especially over the pearl, because we know when this dries, we're going to have that pearl shimmer through as well. And then we're going to add in just a small amount of the yellow, not too much, not too heavy, just a small amount. Now, this was the bit that blew my mind. We're going to take another stencil and we're going to add this over the top. Now, this is wet. We haven't dried this. This isn't a cut and paste video, all in one take. So we're not, no magic here. It's still wet. We're going to add this directly over the top of that stencil and we're going to push down on it so it stays nice and in place. And we're going to bring in our texture paste again. So let's dig back into our pot here and we are going to double stack our texture paste. So straight away over the top here, and you're going to start to see those light colours come in and mix together. Those pinks and blues that we just added, they're probably going to come through because they're on top of the diamonds and they're going to start mixing into this top layer. Don't worry, that's not a problem. Just carry on adding, building up your texture. Now don't forget, our stencils are slightly thicker at Jamie Rogers Crafts, so all of the ones you're going to find on the Craftmania website are going to be cut from our slightly thicker mylar, and again that gives great second depth because we're building up our layers. So we're going to carry on adding this in. We're going to go all the way over the top here, just making sure that we've got a lovely cover going on. We're going to add that back. Now I've got a little bit of colour mix going on in my jar. I'm not worried about that because 9 out of 10 of the techniques I do, I work with this and add colour to it. So a little bit of colouring isn't the end of the world. If you're worried, then put it into a separate jar or a different jar. Now, over the top of this, a bit like we did earlier, we're going to bring in the darker shades now because we know we're working on top of those light shades. So we want to bring in some darkness to this so that this layer stands out on top of the layer that we did in the background. So that was the red and the green. We're going to add in a bit of the blue as well. Now I love the yellow. The yellow to me is the bit that brings in that sort of tortoise shell aspect, that sort of amber effect. So we're going to add a bit of the yellow over the top and let that mix in. Now again, I would possibly leave this a few seconds to let the puddles sort of subside, but we're really working on quite a lot of texture paste underneath from that base layer, and I don't want that to dry and stick to the stencil down to the base layer. So I'm going to be a bit quicker than I normally would in revealing this, just so that I know that we don't create a sticky mess. Now we're going to take that off over the top. Now what you should see we have created is a double stacked stencil effect. Now who even knew that that was possible? Honestly, when I see this lovely lady do this, my mind was blown because what we've created is we've got this masked off diamond effect where we've got one colour on the top, very different colour absorbed into the pearl card underneath. You've then got this sash coming in from the floral spray stencil with different colours being brought into it. Now you think of matting and layering this panel with those colours to tie that together. That is going to look stunning. Now the great bit with this as well is when it dries, because we've been working on top of pearl card, we're going to have that pearlness, for want of a better word, come through in that effect. So here's one I've already done earlier. Now I chose to do this on top of a die cut panel. Now I would recommend, if you're looking at doing this on a smaller panel, you die cut your panel first, because obviously we're now going to sort of squish down quite a lot of layers and quite a lot of texture. So if you die cut first, then build up on top of it. But exactly the same process as what we just did was done to create this panel. Now you can see that pearlescence and the gloss come through on all elements of this panel. How beautiful is this? How clever is that technique to build up and create double stack stenciling? I love that. I thought that was so ingenious. I've then got another one I've done here just to give you a different colourway, slightly different colourway, closer to the one that we just demoed, to give you an idea of how that's going to look for you. But isn't that glorious? Such a fun and clever technique, and one I really loved. And that was my penultimate technique to share with you. I've got one left that I wanted to share. And this one was suggested by the lovely Diane Williams. When we was doing a Facebook Live, she suggested, have you thought of doing this? And I was like, no, I have not. So I'm going to share this with you as well because it does work. I had a little test of it. We did it on the live and it worked perfectly. So now I want to show you on this so that you've got this sort of library of inspiration to go back to once your texture paste and your misters arrive if they're something you choose to purchase. So for our last technique, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to, oh, I've done it again. Keep picking the wrong cameras, I'm sorry. We're going to go back to a stencil. We're going to use our formation stencil. We're going to bring back in that mix that we created earlier of the red and the yellow into the texture base. But this could be any combination, any mix, any type you want. The difference, the new bit that we're going to do is we're going to work on top of one of these sheets. Now this is the sheet that comes off of a self-adhesive sheet. You know, when you pick up your double-sided tape or your foam tape, you have that protective layer over the top of it. When you purchase self-adhesive sheets, you get the same layer, but you get it in an A4 sheet. I don't know if you've found this or if you've used this, it doesn't have to be this. It's basically that we're working on top of a non-stick surface. So whether it is like this, one of the self-adhesive sheets, or maybe you've got a mat that you work on that's non-stick, anything along those lines. What I love about these sheets is I can do multiple of them and I can pop them out of the way and come back to them at a later date. But we're going to place our stencil down on top of the non-stick and we're going to bring in our texture base. And this is a great way to use up, like we are here, any that we're left with, because we're not going to be using it to create a background like you would imagine. What we're going to do is we're going to place this over the top and we're going to try and infill as many of the butterflies as we possibly can so that we get the most use out of the product that we've already mixed that we can do, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? We don't want to waste product, do we? If we don't have to, we don't want to. So we're going to go over the top of these and we're going to add those into the areas that we can, filling up as many of these butterflies as we can get into. Now I am loving this red and yellow mix, isn't that gorgeous? That kind of amber-esque redness, it's beautiful. You can really see the shades coming through, even though we've sort of mixed it and mixed it and mixed it, I'm still seeing that shading come through beautifully. Now again, because we're working on a slightly thicker stencil, that's certainly helping with this, because it means what we've created is more depth to what we're going to actually be working with. So again, remove your stencil, and here we have now quite a few, without me having to be mathematical, butterflies. Now when these dry, you can go in and you can peel them off, and you have got yourself beautiful little coloured butterfly embellishments. Now whether you choose to then form them and give them a bit of shape, which you can absolutely do because they're quite tangible, they're quite movable, and then glue them onto your projects with a bit of dimension, or whether you choose to glue them down flat, or maybe you want to put them in a shaker card and have them all sort of moving around. All up to you. Maybe it's not this stencil, maybe it's the straight line stencil and you want to have peelable pinstripe lines that you want to play with. Maybe it's that Christmas icon stencil that we was looking at a moment ago and you want to use all of these little icons in a shaker card. Whatever stencil you wish to play with, do it over the top of the self-adhesive sheet and you're going to be able to peel them off once dry and get creative with them. So loads and loads of ways you're going to be able to play with those and make different bits with them. So if you think about this, in today's video, we've looked at making sort of crackled backgrounds. We've made coloured crackled backgrounds. We've embossed that. We've die cut that. We've made sort of petri dish style backgrounds. We've done stenciled backgrounds with the misters and the inks and the clear texture paste. We have made our own colours using the misters in the texture paste. We've made our own embellishments with the texture paste. We've done our own prints with them, and that's just what I can remember. But I think there's more than that in this video. So I'm hoping that you've really enjoyed it and it's give you a bit of a base of where you can come for some creativity and some ideas and inspiration once your products arrive with you, so that you can really take inspiration from this and get playing. And don't forget, we've only touched the surface in today's video. You think about all of the different mediums you've already got potentially in your craft stash of glitters, gilding flakes, misters, inks that you could be mixing in with that clear texture paste to make your very own combinations, or sprinkling over the top of it to make glittery texture paste, or even texture paste on their own. You think about our gemstones texture paste that we bring to you, mixing that in with your clear texture paste and diluting that down to make some really cool backgrounds with that. Honestly, this video is just scratching the surface at some of the things you're going to be able to create and do once you've got these products in your hands, if you haven't already got them. So once again, just to recap, let's see if I get the right camera this time. Oh, there they are. So if you would like to go for the bundle, giving you the 6 Elite Misters in all 6 colours, which are the Sunbeam Yellow, the Night Sky Navy, the Gladiator Red, the Heritage Green, the Rose Petal Pink, and the Seashell Blue, along with the 150ml jar of clear texture paste, then you can purchase that bundle for £29.94 instead of being £38.93, which is what it should be. It literally means that you're buying the misters and getting the clear texture paste free of charge, which, considering this is a brand new product that's just been released, what a great way to get your hands on it. Now, if you've looked at this and you think, well, actually, I've already got some items, I can mix in with this, I don't need all of the different bits and the different misters, I just need to get my hands on some clear texture paste. Or maybe you're looking at this and thinking, well, actually, he's right, there's loads I can do with this, I need more than one pot. Then, of course, you can purchase this on its own. It should be £8.99. It's currently got 10% off, so it is only £8.09. Now, the stencils we've been playing with throughout this video, all of the ones we've had a little look at, they should be £5.99 per stencil, but they are on offer for £5.39. And your blending mats, whether you go for the large or the small, they are £5.99 per packet, and they again are on offer for £5.39. There's also bundles for the misters on their own, or you can buy them separately, and there's bundles for the metallic ink pads that we looked at, and there are a few bundles that you might wish to check out again for those stencils too, and those stencils appear in a lot of our collection bundles, so have a look on the page. This is why I'm sending you all onto one page, because everything from our Jamie Rogers Crafts collections are on that one page for you, including our bundle deals, including the cardstock that you might like to get to go with your misters on all of the different mediums that we've released. So have a little look on the one page and it'll give you everything you need. If you have any questions, or you get lost, or you've got any suggestions or any concoctions you would like to see us cover on a future video, then let us know in the comments, because we're always here to help and work with you and answer your questions if we can. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Please don't forget that the link to the page where you can find all of these bits is in the description. Of course, don't forget that it's free UK P&P if you spend over £10. If you spend under £10, it's capped at £2.95. If you wish to upgrade to first class, whether it's under or over £10, it's £3.95. And our international shipping is capped at £10. I think that's all the bits I have to tell you. I think it is. If you do get creative with any of this lot, once it's got to you and you would like to share that with us, we would absolutely love to see that. Please pop onto our different groups, which are created with Craftmania and created with Jamie Rogers Crafts, and you can share with us what you've been creating on our Facebook pages. We always love to see what you've been doing. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. Bye for now.